This is Pluto, the ninth planet from the Sun. At least that's what many of us were taught in school. But in 2006, everything changed. Astronomers decided Pluto wasn't a planet after all, and just like that, they told us to forget about it. But we didn't. And neither did Pluto. That same year, while Pluto was losing its planetary status, NASA launched the New Horizons probe, the first mission to visit this mysterious world up close. What it revealed shocked everyone. We had been wrong. The experts had been wrong. Pluto turned out to be far more fascinating, complex, and alive with mysteries than anyone ever imagined. Planet or not, Pluto demanded our attention. So, why was it demoted in the first place? It wasn't some grand conspiracy, just the evolving way we define objects in the solar system. And this process has been messy for centuries. Back in the 1800s, astronomy was still taking shape, and at one point there were over 20 planets on the books. Every time someone spotted a moon or a large asteroid, it got added to the list. Eventually, astronomers had to tighten the rules, creating clearer criteria for what truly counts as a planet. That's the world Clyde Tombaugh stepped into in 1930. A self-taught astronomer, Tombaugh was hired to hunt for the mysterious Planet X, a hidden world believed to be tugging at the orbits of Uranus and Neptune. After nearly a year of painstaking observation, he spotted a faint, slow-moving light far beyond Neptune. He had found Pluto. At the time, the rules for planethood were simple. It must orbit the Sun. Moons don't count. It must be unique in its neighborhood. Asteroids fail here since there are too many alike. Pluto seemed to check both boxes. It was hailed as a brand new planet, the long-awaited Planet X. But the celebration wouldn't last forever. By the early 2000s, astronomers realized Pluto wasn't alone out there. It was just one of countless icy bodies in a massive region beyond Neptune known as the Kuiper Belt, essentially the solar system's junkyard. So, in 2006, the definition of a planet was updated. A true planet, they decided, must also have enough mass and gravity to clear its orbit of other objects, to dominate its region like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. By that standard, Pluto fell short. And just like that, Pluto lost its crown. All the leftover material from the early solar system, the bits that didn't form the Sun, the rocky inner planets, or the massive gas giants, ended up in a vast outer ring. That's the Kuiper Belt. And here's the twist. Pluto isn't even the biggest object out there. It's just the shiniest. Pluto happens to be one of the most reflective worlds in the solar system. Only Venus and Jupiter reflect more sunlight, thanks to their thick cloud layers. From far away, that shine made Pluto look much larger and more important than it really is. That's why astronomers spotted it first and assumed it was all alone in the dark. But Pluto's orbit sets it apart even more. Unlike most planets, which follow a fairly flat circular path around the Sun, Pluto's orbit is stretched into a dramatic oval. At times, it even swings closer to the Sun than Neptune, almost lining up with Uranus. On top of that, its orbit is tilted by 17 degrees compared to the solar system's flat disk. So, Pluto is almost always traveling above or below the rest of the planets. Not that we'd notice. It takes Pluto 248 years to make just one trip around the Sun. So no, Pluto isn't a planet by the official definition, but it is wonderfully weird, and weird worlds are often the most interesting. That's exactly why scientists at Johns Hopkins University built the New Horizons spacecraft, to find out just how strange Pluto really is. Fittingly, New Horizons launched in 2006, the same year Pluto was officially demoted. The biggest challenge? Distance. Pluto is staggeringly far away, and no one wanted to wait centuries to get there. So NASA built a lightweight probe, only about 1,000 pounds, and strapped it to the most powerful rocket available at the time, an Atlas V with 5 extra boosters. That gave it nearly 2 million pounds of thrust. The result? New Horizons left Earth in a hurry. In just 9 hours, it had already zipped past the Moon, 10 times faster than the Apollo missions. Within a year, it was passing Jupiter. That flyby was more than a shortcut. It let engineers test the probe's cameras and instruments, capturing stunning images of Jupiter and its moons, including an erupting volcano on Io. But the real reason was physics. New Horizons used Jupiter's immense gravity as a slingshot, picking up even more speed to power its way to Pluto. Even with that boost, the trip wasn't quick. It took another 8 years to cross the outer solar system. Finally, in 2015, the probe began sending back its first close-up images of Pluto. At first, it appeared as 2 bright dots in the distance, Pluto and its largest moon, Charon, slowly growing larger as New Horizons closed in. These two worlds, as it turns out, share a fascinating and unusual relationship. Charon, Pluto's largest moon, is about half its size and orbits incredibly close, only about 20,000 kilometers away. For comparison, our moon is nearly 20 times farther, at around 400,000 kilometers from Earth. This closeness, combined with their similar sizes, creates a bizarre kind of tidal lock. Here's how it works. Just like our moon always shows the same face to Earth, Charon always shows the same face to Pluto. But Pluto itself is also locked, so it always shows the same face back to Charon. That means if you were standing on one side of Pluto, Charon would never leave the sky, frozen in place above you. But if you stood on the far side, you'd never see Charon at all. And because Charon is so large relative to Pluto, it doesn't really orbit around Pluto in the traditional sense. Instead, both Pluto and Charon orbit a shared point in space between them, their common center of mass. To an early observer, it almost looked like they were circling an invisible black hole. But nope, that's just gravity doing its strange dance. Watching this cosmic waltz between Pluto and Charon was fascinating on its own, but it was only the appetizer. As New Horizons drew closer, it began capturing the very first high-resolution images of Pluto's surface, and what it revealed was breathtaking. If you were expecting a dull, frozen ball of blue-white ice, Pluto had a surprise. Instead, it was painted in rich shades of deep red, pale blue, golden yellow, white, and burnt orange. And right in the middle, scientists spotted its most striking landmark, a giant, pale, heart-shaped region. That heart is actually a vast plain of nitrogen ice, and each lobe of it has its own character. The side New Horizons passed over, Sputnik Planitia, is as smooth and flat as glass, stretching roughly the size of Texas. What makes it especially remarkable is the lack of craters. In space, no craters means the surface is constantly being renewed. Pluto isn't a dead, frozen rock, it's alive with change. Along the edges of this icy heart, strange patterns appear, carved by glaciers flowing down from rugged highlands into the plain below. But here's the wild part. Those glaciers aren't made of water ice. At Pluto's frigid -229 degrees Celsius temperatures, water ice is as hard as granite. Instead, these glaciers are made of nitrogen ice, frozen from the very gas that makes up most of Earth's atmosphere. Zoom in further and you see the surface etched with polygon-shaped patterns. These are formed by convection currents, where heat from Pluto's interior pushes upward. That heat softens the nitrogen ice, but out here, liquids can't exist, not even liquid nitrogen. Instead, the solid nitrogen transitions directly into gas, a process called sublimation. And that gas doesn't just vanish, it creates a thin, fragile atmosphere that wraps around Pluto. Pluto's thin atmosphere doesn't just hug the surface, it drifts upward, stacking into hazy layers of fog that float above the ground. Because Pluto's gravity is so weak, this atmosphere can stretch far into space before fading away. At the surface, the pressure is astonishingly faint, about 1,000,000 times weaker than Earth's. That's the state New Horizons found it in, way out at the far edge of Pluto's elongated orbit. But remember, Pluto doesn't always linger in the cold outskirts. Its orbit is wildly elliptical, and when it swings closer to the Sun, sublimation ramps up. During those warmer periods, the atmosphere could grow thick enough to reach 1/4 of Earth's surface pressure. That's about 3 times higher than Mars today. At that point, Pluto might even support pools of liquid nitrogen sloshing across its surface. Now, if you glance left of Pluto's icy heart, you'll spot a striking scar, a vast blood-red region. It's nicknamed Cthulhu Macula, after the Lovecraftian cosmic horror, though the official name is Cthulhu Regio. So, why so red? Scientists think it's because of tholins, complex organic compounds formed when sunlight bombards methane and carbon dioxide in Pluto's atmosphere. These molecules get zapped by radiation, clump together, turn deep red, and eventually drift down like radioactive snow. Over time, they blanket parts of Pluto's surface in crimson stains, carried further by the slow flow of ices and gases across the landscape. But the color isn't Pluto's only surprise. Hidden on its surface is a colossal ice volcano called Right Mons. Rising about 5 kilometers high and stretching 150 kilometers wide, this cryovolcano doesn't spit fire. It erupts with a slushy mix of water and methane. And Right Mons isn't alone. It's just the biggest of Pluto's cryovolcanoes. What's remarkable is how young it looks. For a feature so wide, scientists found only a single impact crater, which means the surface has been resurfaced relatively recently. In cosmic terms, that could mean eruptions every few million years.
So where does all that slush come from? The answer takes Pluto from weird to downright mysterious. Despite what we used to learn in school, Pluto isn't just a frozen ball of rock and ice. Evidence from New Horizons suggests it has a warm interior, and beneath its icy crust, there may be a vast underground ocean of liquid water. That's the same kind of hidden ocean we expect inside icy moons like Jupiter's Europa or Saturn's Titan. The difference is, Europa and Titan are kept warm by the crushing pull of their giant planets. Pluto doesn't have that kind of gravitational heating, which raises a baffling question. Where is Pluto's heat coming from? In the early days of the solar system, everything was hot and molten. But Pluto's interior still seems to be holding on to some of that warmth billions of years later. In the beginning, our solar system was like a cosmic dance party, a newborn star blazing at the center, surrounded by a swirling cloud of rock, gas, and metal. Everything was colliding, breaking apart and smashing back together into planets and moons. pure chaos. Eventually, things began to settle down. Smaller worlds like Pluto should have cooled off quickly, especially being so tiny and tucked away in the cold outer reaches of the solar system. And yet, against all odds, Pluto is still warm inside. One possible clue lies with Charon, Pluto's giant moon. The strange thing is that Pluto and Charon are almost the same size, which makes it hard to imagine that Charon was simply captured by Pluto's gravity. The more likely story: the two worlds smashed into each other billions of years ago. But instead of fusing into one or shattering apart, they got locked into a gravitational tug-of-war, a kind of orbital wrestling match. That collision may have pumped fresh energy into Pluto, keeping its interior alive. And here's something fascinating. Pluto's iconic heart-shaped plane sits directly opposite Charon in their orbital alignment. That's probably not a coincidence. Plus, Charon itself wears a reddish stain at its north pole, the same tholins we see on Pluto. Scientists think those may have been blasted into space by Pluto's ice volcanoes, escaping its weak gravity before drifting over and settling on Charon. As incredible as these discoveries are, they may be the last close-up views of Pluto we'll see in our lifetime. NASA's priorities have shifted closer to home, missions to Titan, Europa, Venus, and Mars. There's no second New Horizons mission on the drawing board. But Pluto isn't the end of the story. The original New Horizons probe is still out there, sailing deeper into the Kuiper Belt,